And welcome back, students, for another lesson in web design. Today we're going to focus on two new things for you to do in your web page. And before we get started, let me just add in some quick sample text here. So let me just add in a sample paragraph here. So I just added in, this is a paragraph, this will be a link. So that's the first thing we're going to focus on. So generally speaking, when we make a link, and let me just put it down here, you're going to use the following format for your link. You use this bracket, then href equals, and you can see it's going to ask me to browse. If you have a picture already in where your web page is, then it's going to show up here. You can see my web page, of course, HTML exercise 1, giraffe.jpg. I happen to copy and paste that into the folder. You can also save it in there, whatever. If it's in that folder where the web page is, it will look for that picture file. But generally speaking, you can also do this by URL. So I could make this using quotes. I could put a URL here. That URL would be something like https www.google.com, something like that. And then let me just finish closing off the format here. And in here I'll put link text. Okay. And you'll see that right here it says the word link text. So whatever goes right here, right, that area right there is always going to be what you want the person to click on. So whether it's the word link, whether it's Google, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever you want the person to go to, that would be what you would have on your page. This part right here in the URL is more of where do you want them to go. So let me go ahead and just go ahead in here and change this just to real quick. Let me just put google.com. Okay. So I just put in that link. Now let me save this. And let's go ahead and test that code just to see if that's going to work. So this opened up. And you can see right here I have my link text. So I click that. And it gives me this not found error. All right. So let's just try something else real quick in here. And I mentioned in the beginning you had to put like an https://www.google.com. And if I put that in there, so let me just refresh this page and click the link text again. And right now the preview is having some issues. So let me just go ahead and open up the page manually. And if I click it then, all right, it's working. Because sometimes, occasionally, that's one thing you will encounter in preview mode is sometimes that link text isn't work. The preview mode doesn't work right. So let me just show what happens with just regular Google.com. All right. So let me hit back, and I'm going to refresh just to make sure it has the latest version. Click link text, and you can see it says, I cannot reach this page. And the reason for that is because inside of Dreamweaver here, when we just put google.com, it doesn't know where to search for that. So if you're going to go to a web page, you either need to have https://www.google.com or like http www.google.com. All right, you have to have the full web address in there. So it'd be whatever, like if you were going to copy a website, so let me just quickly go here, make another tab. And let's just say I want to go to, let's say I want to go to, I don't know, something that's not Google. Let's do the school website, hbpirates.org. All right, I could put www.hbpirates.org, but the easiest way to do this is to not worry about messing up anything. Is if you know the website URL, you can come up here, you can copy that, and we can go back into Dreamweaver, and we can paste that in there, and you can see it will automatically add for me the HTTP part. So that's a good way to make sure you have everything in there. All right. Now, this, of course, is just for a text-based link, and now let's go and look at if we want it to be, rather than like a website, we want it to be an image. Because really they function very similarly, except it's not going to use the ahref tag. Now we're going to use this image source tag. Okay, so I'm going to use image src, and the most common mistake I'm going to warn you right now is when I see students do this, they'll put scr. Scr is not source, it's src. So please make sure that you have this spelled correctly. Equals quote URL again, and you notice that when I just had that equals in there, it gave me the option for browsing. We'll come back to that in a second. All right, and this, of course, again, is the URL. And then you're going to have some alt text. Alt text we leave in there, so that pretty much it's just a description of what are the images. In this case, I'm going to put a giraffe because that's what I'm going to put in here. And then we just close it out. Now, it shows right now, if you notice, a broken image, and that's because I haven't put that in here. Now, there's two ways you can do an image. If you want to do an image from another website, you can copy and paste the URL of the image in there. Now, just have to be careful you're going to do that because of two things. Actually, three. So the first thing is you have to make careful that you're not copying the website. You want to make sure it's just the URL of the image, which means like the last part of the web page should say something like .jpeg or .png because it's the actual image file. Second thing you have to make sure of is you have to make sure that if you're pulling this image from another site, that it is in something like the Creative Commons or the public domain, so that way you're keeping with the legality of using that image. And then, of course, the last piece to talk about is sometimes when these images are out on other sites, that image may no longer be hosted on that site, or the URL may change, and then you'll end up with a broken link or a broken image in this case. So it's always a good idea to, if you're going to add images, if possible, I mean, if you're out linking, it's fine, but if it's possible to have it on your own computer. And that's what we're going to do today. So I'm just going to take that off there, and I'm going to go back to here where I can browse. And of course, here's that giraffe.jpg, and I can click that. It'll automatically add the picture in for me. But let's say I didn't want to use that giraffe picture. I can click on browse, and I can go here and insert my image that way. Now, a Dreamweaver actually is nice in that I don't actually even have to do this. I can actually do a lot of this stuff using the built-in tools of Dreamweaver, which we will get to later on in this course. We will talk about using some of these tools up here, but I want you to be familiar with how to look at code and diagnose how to put that in your web page. And I'm just put giraffe in here, because one thing you'll run into later on if we're not familiar with looking at code on its own is that we'll have a bunch of this code thrown in there, and you're also going to like, wait a minute, something's not working, what's wrong? And you just look at your code and say, I don't know what this means. The reason why we're doing the code side first before we get to anything with Dreamweaver is just that we have some familiarity with what the code is going to do. All right. Now, the last thing I will talk about here is when you're putting this picture file in here, is you want to do a couple things here. If you're going, you can also type this out here manually, this giraffe.jpg, which if you're going to do that, if I wanted to do this, I could just manually come in here and I could say source equals giraffe.jpg. Right, I could type that in there. A couple things you gotta watch out for is make sure you don't do something like giraffe.png, because if you do giraffe.png, it's not the same file. And when it's not the same file, Dreamweaver is not going to be able to find it, and your web page will not be able to find it. So you have to make sure that you're using the correct file extension. Additionally, you want to make sure, even though you can path it to different locations, a good practice to do is to always make sure, in this case, our web page and our image are in the same folder. So in this case, if we go back to here, you can see I have the web page and that giraffe.jpg in the same folder. And so that's just a good practice to get into, because then later on when we start actually using folders and stuff like that, it makes it easier for file pathing, and you run into less issues than using that sort of a technique. All right, and now let's just do one more thing, which is actually taking an image and making it a link. So we've so far looked at making a link. We've showed at putting an image into your web page. But let's say I want to make the image the link. So I'm going to modify this right here, And so let's go ahead and modify this code. So I'm just going to back this up just a little bit. I'm going to leave that right there. All right. So if you need to go back in the video and look at how do I put in this, how do I put that, obviously you can go back in the video, but this is how you could make a image, a link. So I'm going to leave the image source in here. So image source is like picture.jpg or whatever it is. And then in here, after I've done my ahref, I just add in right here at this point an image source. Right? And let's go ahead and test this here. And I'll just do this since it was having issues earlier. So here's my clicky. And you see that the link still works. However, the image did not show up here. The reason why it didn't show up is because I forgot to put a tag right here at the start of this. And let me just add in some alt text again. All right. And now you can see there's my giraffe. All right, the word clicky, I actually don't need that anymore because that is now being replaced by the image of the giraffe. And so if I go back and look at that image, so let me just open this back up. You can see there's my giraffe, and you notice that my mouse is now a different kind of pointer. So if I click on the giraffe, it will redirect me out to the school web page. So the biggest change you'll notice here is that rather than using text, I used a image code after the URL. All right, and I know this is kind of a longer lesson, but that concludes it for today, folks. Until next time.